Imagine, for a second, one of the most beautiful landscapes on the planet, Patagonia. Now, picture a shy, endangered animal living right there, literally alongside bustling towns and communities. What if the secret to saving that animal wasn't hidden in some high-tech lab, but was actually right there, in plain sight, held within the knowledge of the people who call that place home? Okay, let's get into it. So everything we're talking about today comes from a really fascinating study published in 2023. It's by researchers Carla Pulzi and Anna Ladio, and it appeared in the Journal of Ethnobiology and Ethnomedicine. They wanted to dig into the connection between this very special otter and the people living in and around Argentina's incredible Nahuel Huapi National Park.
Now, the star of our story is the huillín, which is also known as the southern river otter. And it's not just any animal. It's what scientists call an umbrella species. This is a super important idea. It basically means that if you protect the huillín and its habitat, you're automatically protecting tons of other plants and animals in that same ecosystem. So, the fate of this one little otter has these huge ripple effects.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at just how much danger this otter is in. Then, we'll dive into this mystery about what the local community actually knew about it. We'll see how researchers teamed up with the public, uncover the pretty surprising results, and finally, look at how all this knowledge is creating a brand new path forward for conservation.
So let's start with the stakes, because they are high. Just how bad is the situation for Patagonia's huillín?
Well, it's pretty serious. The huillín is officially endangered, and you can only find it in this specific part of the world. As the top predator in its freshwater system, it plays a huge role in keeping everything else in balance. It's so important, it's actually the emblem of the national park. But tragically, its home has shrunk by a staggering 80%, mostly because of the old fur trade. And today, the habitat that's left is all broken up, and the quality is just getting worse.
So this leads to a really big question. For an animal that's so important, there was this massive blind spot. Conservationists knew they needed help from the community, but they had basically no idea what the local people, from tour guides to families who lived there for generations, what they actually knew about the huillín.
So the big question the researchers set out to answer was this. How does the knowledge about the huillín actually change from person to person? Do park rangers know more than people in the city? Do older folks know more than younger ones? Figuring this out was absolutely key.
And here's where it gets a little tricky. The huillín has a couple of lookalikes. There's the coipo, which is a native rodent, but sometimes people call it by the same local name. Then you have the American mink. That one's an invasive species, and it looks and acts a lot like the huillín. So just getting the identification right is like step one for getting any good data.
To solve this puzzle, the researchers didn't just hang out in a lab. Nope, they went straight to the community. They used this approach called ethnozoology, which is basically a form of citizen science. The idea was to work with the people, not just study them from a distance. Their method was honestly brilliant. They set up these open workshops, and they used really good photos of the 3 different animals to see if people could tell them apart. Then they did interviews, and this is the crucial part. If someone said they'd seen a huillín, the researchers would work with them to pinpoint the exact spot on a map. And they did this with 96 different people. We're talking a real mix of park rangers, tour guides, and residents from both the countryside and the towns. This gave them a really solid set of data that represented the whole community.
Okay, so they gathered all this information. What did they find out? Well, this is where the story takes a really fascinating turn, one that even the researchers didn't see coming.
The first bombshell result? A whopping 95% of the people they talked to correctly identified the huillín from the photos. I mean, that is an incredibly high number. It showed that the locals recognized this animal way better than anyone had assumed.
And this chart just makes it crystal clear. The confusion rates were tiny. Only 5% mixed it up with the invasive mink, and just 3% with the coipo. This proves there's a really strong, clear recognition of the endangered otter across the entire community.
But here's the kicker. The most surprising part of all. The researchers thought for sure that knowledge would be different based on someone's age or their job, but it wasn't. As they say right here, the knowledge was remarkably homogeneous. Tour guides, city residents, park staff, everyone had a similar and high level of knowledge. This was a total surprise.
There was really only one big difference they found, and it wasn't about knowledge, it was about experience. It turns out people living in rural areas were 84% more likely to have actually seen a huillín in the wild, which, when you think about it, makes perfect sense. They live right next to the otter's best habitat.
So, what do you do with all of this information? I mean, it's not just interesting data. This discovery has the power to totally change the game for huillín conservation.
Remember those maps they made with people's sightings? Well, check this out. About 61% of those sightings confirmed places where scientists already knew otters lived. But, and this is amazing, almost 39% of the sightings pointed to brand new areas, places where there were no official records of otters at all. The community literally put new habitats on the conservation map.
And that's really the bottom line here. The study proved there's this solid foundation of shared knowledge across the whole community. You don't have to waste time teaching people what an otter looks like. They already know. This is the perfect starting point for creating conservation plans that are actually led by the local community.
And this really shows you the difference in approach. The old way of doing science can be slow, really expensive, and it can miss things. But when you team up with local citizens, you build knowledge together, you raise awareness, and maybe most importantly, you create this sense of shared ownership and a real long-term commitment to protecting the species.
This story from Patagonia really proves that sometimes the most powerful tool for conservation isn't some fancy satellite tag or a drone. It's just a conversation. And it leaves us all with a pretty big question to think about. What hidden local knowledge is out there in our own communities that could be the key to protecting the wildlife right in our own backyards?